Good morning. You're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Danny Laurel. It's the start of a new trading day. Let's kick off with our banner story. The country may see better growth prospects if Metro Manila achieves a so-called good level of community protection by November. That is according to Asian Development Bank Country Director Kelly Bird, who says the lender's April forecast of 4.5% growth for 2021 could improve given the pickup in vaccine rollout. At the current rate of almost 250,000 doses a day, the ADB says it expects to see a good level of community by November, particularly in NCR. The government has so far administered over 12 million doses, with more than 2.8 million Filipinos now fully vaccinated. Bird says the Philippines could return to its longer-term growth of over 6% by 2023. He adds the country remains well-positioned as a good investment destination, with the infrastructure program expected to boost the economy and healthcare system. However, he notes that COVID-19 variants and a potential surge in infections still pose threats to recovery. Bird's statement comes after Moody's Analytics slashed its growth forecast for the Philippines to 4.9%, from its earlier estimate of 5.3% due to what it describes as a sluggish vaccination rollout. Now, over at the central bank, Governor Ben Diokno says the BSP will only withdraw monetary support once it sees indisputable signs of economic recovery on the back of manageable inflation environment and sustained downtrend in virus transmission. Diokno says the timing for the unwinding of monetary support is crucial, and he notes the BSP will carry out disengagement strategy that avoids risks associated with early or late implementation. Now, pork imports surged in the first 2 months of the implementation of lower tariffs. That's as reported by the Finance Department. The agency said pork imports jumped by a whopping 500% to almost 25 million kilograms in April, from just 4 million kilograms in the same month of last year. That further increased to 36 million kilograms in May, which was 506% higher than a year ago. But the thing is, the lower tariffs still resulted in over 1.3 billion pesos in revenues losses for the Customs Bureau. Now, recall that Finance Secretary Sonny Dominguez expects the government to lose up to 11 billion pesos this year from the president's decision to roll back the tariff rates on pork shipments. But he says that in the long run, the move would allow retail prices to stabilize following the shortage brought about by the African swine fever. Taking a peek at how we are opening 3 minutes into trade here, you can see on my Bloomberg terminal still a continued slide, actually quite flat, 6992.11 as investors weigh in on what's going to be happening today. Now, recall, I'll pull out the 3-day chart for you so you can see how all that excitement after finally breaching that 7,000 levels, psychological levels, as analysts have called it, is now waning. And you can see that slide of 0.14% just in the past 3 days of trade. And that, before yesterday, when we had breached that 7,000 levels, we were already at a 20-week high. This, according to analysts, there are a lot of issues that investors are looking at with regards to the vaccine supply. Now, recall that several cities in the capital region have halted their first dose vaccination programs. That's as the supply from the national government runs out. Makati, in particular, said that the scheduled inoculation of frontline workers for the first time will not push through on Tuesday, and it also shut down several vaccination sites in malls and in schools. Apart from Makati, you've got Parañaque, Caloocan, Valenzuela. They have stopped first dose of vaccinations. Malabon and Muntinlupa, meanwhile, said they will no longer entertain walk-ins. So a lot of eyes on whether that's going to be resolved anytime soon. Meanwhile, let's take a quick peek at the movers of the morning. You've got Bloomberry up by 2%. That's leading the charge here, Mega World as well, and Emperador. So quite a mixed picture from real estate to casinos to liquor brand here. But if you look at the downside and what is really pulling down investors, DMCI down by 1 4/10%, together with Ayala Corp and Jollibee Foods. I did want to take a quick peek at Petron. That's in the news this morning. This as they're looking for an okay or go signal from the SEC to issue 18 billion pesos worth of bonds. They have a proposed 50 billion pesos already, and they are hoping to start that from September 27 until October 1st, and then list that the PDEX on October 8th. They will be using the proceeds of this 18 billion pesos to redeem their other bonds. So basically for refinancing their Petron, trading flat this morning at 3 pesos and 57 centavos. And finally, let's take a quick peek at PhilInvest land here and how that is going. I just want to try and clear out for our viewers here that it seems to be that none of the stocks are moving at the moment. We're going to be checking in on whether the index is actually moving. You can actually see the index moving, but some other stocks are not yet. So there might have been a glitch here. But just taking a quick peek at PhilInvest here, trading at 1 peso 12 centavos. So yet to see some action in terms of trade. This as the SEC has greenlit the PhilInvest sponsored REIT, which they have already announced would be happening in the third quarter. So right now the name is Cyberzone Properties, but they will be changing the name to PhilInvest REIT, and they're hoping to conduct the IPO from July 19 to 28 with a debut of listing on August 6. Now recall, they're hoping to net up to 14.35 billion pesos at shares priced at 8 pesos and 30 centavos each. Just when the vaccination rollout was gaining some steam, supply issues threaten community protection yet again. Now, here to chat with us about the private sector's response, we have with us Ambassador Benedicto Yujico, PCCI President. Good morning, Ambassador, and welcome to Business World Live.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Sir, let's talk about the idea of community protection. We were hoping for that instead of herd immunity, which is 70 to 85% by the end of the year. Now we're looking at targets of 40%. But right now, even that 40% target seems to be threatened. What is going on here in terms of vaccine supply? Is the bottleneck really from the supply side issue or with the rollout issue?
Well, it's a matter of logistics. It is very difficult to actually forecast exact delivery dates of the vaccine because even the suppliers will just give you estimates of when it will be delivered. But because vaccine is in demand all over the world, you should actually expect some hiccups along the way. But generally speaking, I think the government's importations are arriving and arriving more or less on time. Plus, in addition, the private sector orders of vaccine have started to arrive. So on the private sector side, you will see now that, for example, Jollibee has even hired not Araneta, but the Colosseum so that they can actually implement vaccination of their employees because the vaccines that they have ordered for their employees have already arrived. So all in all, are we very happy about the way things are happening? No, it could improve, but it could be a lot worse as well. So what's happening is all right. Not perfect, but okay.
Okay. Sir, according to Bloomberg, with the current rate, which is 250,000 doses per day, that was before this supply issue, it would take 21 months before we actually achieve any sort of herd immunity here. With the private sector's participation now, you've already started with ICTSI, for example, rolling Moderna. How will this improve and speed up this 21-month time frame?
Well, 21 months is arithmetic. We that's an arithmetical calculation, and which may or may not be true. We are hoping for earlier completion of our vaccine program. But the thing is this. The vaccines are not going to be a complete solution to the COVID-19. I think we should consider another factor, which is we have to learn how to live safely with COVID-19. We have to learn how to open up our businesses so that our people can get back to work, so that they can earn money to buy food, medicine, etc., etc. So we should do this together. No, we should try as much as possible to get as many people vaccinated, but that is not the only way to do this. We, starting as soon as possible, should try to open up now because we have to learn how to live with COVID 19. We cannot stay indoors. We cannot not go outside. That's not what I think will help the Philippines the most. And this is not unique. What my comments are is I am now seeing this being thought of and implemented in at least two countries. One is Singapore. The other one is Australia. Australia, for example, they were very strict in terms of lockdowns, and but now they realize that that's not going to solve their problem. They have to just learn how to live with COVID.
Sir, do businesses have enough money to, for this new normal to invest in all of these new protocols that would allow a safe reopening? How can you determine, what is really a safe reopening of establishments?
I think it's not complicated. Safe is this: get vaccinated if you can, and observe the normal, safe distancing. Keep on the masks even if you are vaccinated, and as much as possible, continue to wash your hands and so on and so forth. Continue to do that because that is going to help. And it doesn't mean that we can be careless after we are vaccinated. Just have to continue to be careful. But most important, our attitude should be, hey, we have to learn how to live life with vaccine around, with COVID-19 around.
For given that, and people have already been doing this for more than a year now, a year and a half, what should happen in terms of quarantine restrictions after July 15 in particular? How long can GCQ still be extended, at least in NCR, until businesses suffer too much?
I think that the sooner this is lifted, as I was mentioning to you, as long as the infection rates are within reason in particular areas, I think the government, IATF, should open up the economy without any restrictions, but still insist that everybody try to keep safe. So July 15 is fine. Hopefully, we will be selective at that date because if, in fact, the infection is very serious, you don't want to open up that particular area. Selective opening, I think, will be the best alternative for us.
Sir, thoughts on presidential advisors for entrepreneurships, Joey Concepcion, earlier floating an idea that maybe we could segregate the vaccinated from the unvaccinated in areas like elevators, offices, cinemas, gyms. Is this a viable option? Have you seen this in any other country? And would this cause, some issues in terms of discrimination, vaccine discrimination?
Well, yes, I think it will. I'm not sure how effective this can be implemented. There are people who will absolutely feel that this is discrimination, and I think we have to be careful. However, I laud a presidential advisor for trying to figure out ways and means on how we can open up safely. But this is something which has some social and maybe even political considerations because this is segregation. Okay, non-vaccine, okay, dito ka. If you are vaccinated, dito ka. How can you tell? A lot of people fake the vaccine cards anyway. So we have to be careful on how to implement that.
Sir, when you look at the members of the chamber, are you seeing improvement in terms of vaccine hesitancy? That there's actually, when this private sector is involved in giving the vaccines to their own employees, that the people are much more willing to get the vaccine?
I think so, yes. That's definitely what we have observed. If it's a company sponsored, they know the vaccine. If their boss themselves get vaccinated, that serves as a very good incentive for the employees to say, okay, we are going to follow our boss. And of course, a lot of education has to be done. Employees have to be told, look, this is not a guarantee that you will never get sick, but this guarantees you will not get seriously ill and you will not die. So a lot of them on that basis say, okay, yeah, we'll follow. So no need to convince them and force them. I'm not really for forcing people to get vaccinated, but that's a personal opinion.
More on education in terms
Yeah,
rather than.
education. Yeah, educate them. That's the best way.
Sir, another issue that I wanted to talk about, apart from the vaccine story, sir, the idea that there's a House bill right now being filed at the House of Representatives allowing the government to operate and own power plants, and probably or possibly halting privatization. Your thoughts on this, and that this might be the way to address the power shortage issue that we are now facing?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I think what the legislators should do, and also people from the executive branch, is to look very carefully what is the problem. And the problem is, I think, there's lack of enforcement on existing regulations. For example, we are in a pandemic now, and then to hear that we will have shortage of power, come on, what are we all? Are all asleep? What will happen if, in fact, walang pandemic? Then what? We will have no power or 50% power? Hindi pwede yun. We have to get the people accountable. Sino bang accountable dito? Okay, now, the ERC, as the country's chief regulator, should work with Department of Energy and NGCP. And they have to compel the players to comply with the necessary requirements. Hindi naman po pwedeng, insofar as PCCI is concerned, matagal na itong, we have participated in what we call uninterrupted power supply. We have already convinced our big companies and small companies that can afford it to buy generators so that when, in fact, there is a shortage, they can turn this on and to lessen the burden on our power grid. But nonetheless, this is working 85%. If you ask Meralco, how is the private sector doing on this uninterrupted power supply? They say, oh, very, very good. But we cannot burden the private sector too much. These electric companies, whether you are a distributor, whether you are a power producer, they're all making billions and billions. And what happens if you don't pay your electric bill? Puputulan ka. What happens if they do not supply power? Walang nangyayari sa kanila. So they have to be held accountable. They have to be penalized. And there are, in fact, penalties that should compel, for example, NGCP for non-compliance of what they're supposed to do, which is to make sure that there are excess power so that when we need it, it's there. Hindi po pwedeng, oops, sorry, wala. Ngayon, what? Are you crazy? It's pandemic. Power demand is so much lower now. Yeah, hindi pwede yan.
So what's the rationale for this?
Laws are not gonna do it.
Yes.
Compliance, making the companies comply with the regulation, I think that should be the first step.
Sir,
Getting
final.
government to go into the power business, that's not a good solution.
Okay, so before we let you go, sir, just one point on that. The ERC has actually specifically asked the chamber for the members to use their own generators to augment the supply. Does that mean that they haven't been doing it? Because you've already mentioned that you have been doing this for quite some time. What does the ERC want more in terms of participation from the PCCI with the use of generators? How much more power could they save, or how much more risk can they actually take on for the rest of the consumers not to have these brownouts?
Yeah, the private sector, if you ask Meralco will tell you, private sector on their own power generation has substantially complied with 85% of their commitment on how much power private sector will supply. But for the government agency to tell the private sector, particularly yung mga maliliit na business, bumili nga kayo ng generator, sobra naman yon. That is out of bounds already. That you cannot do that. Hirap na nga, and then bibili pa sila ng generator. They hardly have enough money to pay the employee's salary. Come on. Let's not go there.
Thank you so much, sir, for those insights. Of course, you mentioned that the PCCI has already been pulling their weight when it comes to this energy situation. That was, of course, Ambassador Benedicto Yuhico, PCCI President.
Okay, thank you.
Now, here's another story. We are keeping our eyes on. The Finance Department is already looking into a plan to sell or lease the remaining military land in Fort Bonifacio, Taguig. Now, this comes after President Duterte brought up the idea once more when he visited Zamboanga City to meet with the survivors of the Sulu plane crash.
Department of Finance, may working group po si Secretary Dominguez to study the long-term solution to the pension issue of not just of the armed forces but also of the police. And I think maghintay tayo dun sa magiging recommendations ng Department of Finance tungkol dito.
Fort Bonifacio is home to the headquarters of the Philippine Army and Marines, as well as one of the naval stations. Now, over the years, Duterte had promised several times to raise money for soldiers' benefits, including for life insurance and housing.
Bonifacio, mayroon na kaming na-free up na when I was the commanding general of the Philippine Army, mayroon na tayong na-free up na around 17 or 16, more than 16 hectares. Yun yung i-open natin to interested investors na pwedeng gamitin for mixed use, hotels and other amenities na appropriate sa lugar.
But presidential spokesman Harry Roque says there is still no timeline on when all of this might happen.
Pero we have an agency headed by Secretary Vince Dizon ng BCDA, and the mandate precisely is to make full utilization of all our military assets, including camps and bases, para po ma-improve din ang kapakanan ng ating mga sundalo.
And that's a first look into the business day. Today is Wednesday, July 7, 2021. Catch Business World live for the market close. That's at 3:15 p.m. today. I'm Danny Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.